Welcome to Plant More, Worry Less, a podcast by the Huachuma Foundation. We are grateful for the supporters who make this show possible. To learn more about our work or support our mission, please visit huachumafoundation.org. Also note, in this podcast we discuss sacred plant medicines for educational purposes only. Nothing herein should be considered medical or legal advice, and we do not encourage using any substances in places where they are illegal. We hope you enjoy this very special episode.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, it is just Hamid and I, and we're going to talk about one of maybe our favorite topics, which is going to Peru every year. And so today we have so much to catch you up on. We had two amazing groups in Peru this year, the Heart Path and the Fire Path. We also went to Chavín, which we might even have a follow-up episode on, more of a roundtable discussion with who joined us. And also I did a little bit of personal work with Miguel and the medicine this year. So we have a lot of exciting things to talk about and talk through, and we're just so grateful that you decided to join us today.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite topics, and there's a lot. I also feel like we haven't had a show in a while, so we're doing a lot of throat clearing to remember how to do this. So
Yes.
yeah, but I think it would be interesting if you shared, because you went to Peru. We're recording this in middle of August, but you went to Peru in April and had a whole lot of adventures there. Obviously, this is about Huachuma, our organization, so probably want to focus there. But I'm curious, tell us about your trip.
Well, this trip was the way I can summarize it is that it was one of the most radical acts of self-love that I have ever given myself. And it's been so interesting to watch how that's transpired in my life coming home. But I left in about mid-April, had a retreat, like sort of more of a yoga-y retreat. And then in between that one and what we do and going to Chavín in mid-June or beginning of June, I was working with Miguel and staying in Tarai, and I ended up doing my very first diet with the medicine. And it was, pretty life-changing. And it's still like very much rippling out into my life and probably will be for a long time. So I'm kind of just landing and waiting to see how all of that takes effect. But when I was there, it was really just so amazing to be connecting with the medicine myself and to be building a relationship with Miguel and the Huachuma garden that we have. And for me, it was just the best case scenario ever.
Yeah. What you mentioned a diet. What's a diet for people that don't know?
Okay. Well, this is like a little bit of a new concept with me working with plants in this way. So feel free to like piggyback and correct me or, also add on to this. But the way I related to this was I'm coming in and I am committing myself and sort of marrying the medicine. And I always had this feeling that I was going to diet a plant, but I didn't know which one. And then the idea for Huachuma came in. And it came in after a couple of years of working pretty intensely with the medicine, with you and Miguel and what we do in Peru. And then I just kind of kept getting the calling to go deeper with it. And for me, that's what a diet felt like and still feels like, is deepening the connection, merging with the cactus consciousness, and committing myself to it in a specific way beyond just being a participant in a ceremony.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you say that before, that it's like marrying the plant, which is an interesting way to describe it. I think other people would use the same types of things. They say like entering a deeper relationship with the plant, or I don't want to take away from what you said. So you can continue. I have my own understanding of diets based on what I've done, but I'm curious as to yours.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's mine. And I think before you maybe mentioned it was like a contract or something that you enter into. And you were saying that like marriage is sort of a contract in a way. So that's just another way of looking at it. But yeah, so I think that it even helps me understand what I did even more. So I like came with my full heart and went all in. And then hearing other people talk about diets, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the feeling that I was having during the time there.
Yeah. So the term diet is the English term. I guess I'll just give a little background on why I said that in the past. Yeah, I think it actually gets confused now. A lot of people talk about like the ayahuasca diet, or some people will ask, just coming to a ceremony, what's the diet? But, the history of this is a little bit more nuanced because the term diet is obviously coming from the Spanish term dieta. And dieta in certain traditions means something very specific. And I can't speak for all of the traditions. I spent a lot of time in a Shipibo tradition, Shipibo people of the jungle, that have a very established dieta tradition. And in the Shipibo dietas, what you do is you decide, usually in consultation with your maestro, like the curandero, that you're working with, what plant is most helpful to you. And then you would do a dieta with that plant where you would, under the guidance of that person, the curandero usually, agree to do a lot of things. Like they call it a diet or dieta because you're actually giving up food in a way, like you're eating very simply. Like in the Shipibo dietas, obviously, often it's like no salt, no fats, like very limited fats, like no spicy food. So you're eating kind of like plainly. And the reason for that is that you don't want to have foods with a strong vibration or signature that are going to interfere with you connecting with the vibration of the plant you're dieting. And so there's like the physical diet. Then there's also the things that you give up, right? Like the curandera might say, well, like for this plant, you need to give up thinking about certain things. You give up sexual activity. You give up, like speaking. Some of them are like silent, so like what you're giving up is what you're contracting with the plant for. So you tell the plant basically like, hey, I'm going to agree to give up all these things. And then the plant, is agreeing that if you do that for a certain period of time that you commit to, that the plant is going to teach you, right? So that's the contract that you make with the plant. It's like, I'll do this. And then the plant's like, yep, if you do that, I will do this, right? And so that's sort of like where I came to that contractual language. Of course, I used to be an attorney, so I speak of it like that because I'm like, oh yeah, it's like a contract. Yeah, I know about contracts. Like this is a contract, and there are consequences, just like in a contract. Let's say you like break your diet in the Shipibo tradition, then like, what's the consequence? Well, there's penalties, that come, and you might have to repair it. You might have to. So it is like a court of law, but it's like a court of law in the jungle, and it's dealing with other things other than like what we deal with in a court. So there's that aspect. Then the reason I say it gets confused because people will say, what's the ayahuasca diet? Is because if you go to, let's say, a restaurant in Iquitos, which is in the jungle, they'll have an ayahuasca diet menu that you can order food off of, which is apparently safe for working with plant medicine. That's completely different than a dieta. That's just food that they say isn't going to be contraindicated for working with ayahuasca, for instance. Like it's not going to be fermented. So that's like a totally different conversation. So like when I hear the term diet, sometimes it's like people using it that way, like the people of the jungle. And then it gets even more complicated because the people of the jungle aren't the only people that have worked with plants. So many cultures, including Western cultures, European cultures, have all had ways of working with plants to develop relationships with them. But I think now the trendy term is diet. And I don't really attach so much to that, because to me, the way that you connect with the plant, it doesn't have to be like the Shipibo way or this way or that way. That we all can connect with plants in powerful ways. And there's many things we can learn from how these people do it, but that isn't the only way to do it. So I just, that's my framework. So um, I'm not disagreeing at all. Actually, I think like marrying the plant is a good way to describe it. So did you get married to Huachuma?
I did. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And we had our honeymoon in Chavín. So it was nice. Perfect.
Right.
That works well for me because, I name everything and sort of personify everything. So that was a good way for me to relate to it.
Yeah. Tell us about the marriage then. How did that go? What did it entail?
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that you brought up the Shipibo way of doing things, because that's really the only way that I've ever heard of doing a diet, was like sort of in the jungle, not a lot of food, not a lot of, just like very kind of strict rules. And Miguel doesn't really work that way. And he said the Cactus is a bit more lenient and doesn't really work that way either, which, I was curious about, but I had my own sort of expectations and judgments and wonderings about that. And, so with that, the food was really like just eat well, just eat clean, and not a lot of like heavy fats or things that are hard to digest. He said no bread, but he was really like just eat well, because Huachuma, you're with the medicine all day and it depletes certain things. So his rules were like eat clean and eat well. And so I was cooking my own food, which I think was like part of the whole magic of it. It was all my vibration and my energy that I was putting into my body. So as far as food goes, it's a bit more lenient than being in the jungle with ayahuasca stuff. Yeah, like speaking about the difference between the Cactus and the different traditions from the jungle, I was kind of waiting for the intensity of that to come. I was sort of judging the experience a little bit at the beginning, and I was waiting for the sledgehammer to come down and me to be sort of like really strict and going into that. And it didn't really so much happen that way. And now as I was going through it, I was like, oh, this is so perfect. Just the way that this goes, because Miguel really left me sort of to my own devices to connect with the plant. It wasn't about him, which is really cool. He sort of held the space and stepped out of the way and let me do my thing. And so, like, I guess to just give you like a timeline of how it went, we did 2 ceremonies at first, just with like random groups who were coming. And that was really helpful for me to do sort of those 2 warm-up ceremonies, because I had just gotten done with a very busy, intense yoga retreat, and we were moving and doing so many different things. So the fact that I got those 2 ceremonies to start with was really helpful, because then I was like in the Cactus vibration and the vibration of the land and the prayers, and starting to really tap into my own prayers with that. But I wasn't really sure if the diet had started yet. Like Miguel seems to be, a little bit just going with the flow. And that's, I think, a lot of how people are in Peru. But I was like, okay, did it start yet? I know we started ceremony yet, but like, is this the opening of the container? And so I found myself getting a little bit frustrated, because I like to know like when it's game time and when it's not, like when do I really need to show up and when not. So I was feeling like, okay, I'd like a little bit more instruction. But then I guess the third technically ceremony that we had, he brought out his chanupa and the tobacco. And then it was very clear that this was the opening of our like serious diet container. So I was really grateful for that. And with Miguel, I think because he follows the Red Road traditions, there was smoking of the pipe involved to open and close each day, which like was really one of my favorite parts of this whole process with him, was the tobaccos. And sort of sharing that with him. And that first day, I drank the medicine on the land, but before this, I actually got to make the medicine with him. It was just him and I, and then he would leave me for a couple hours, and I was just there in his kitchen making the medicine and talking and singing to the Cactus and just kind of in my own world with it and praying to it. And then the first day I got to drink it on the land, we smoked the tobaccos, he served me the medicine, and then he just left till like 5 p.m. And I was just there at the Cactus Garden, which was so amazing because this was the garden that we had been raising money for the last, I don't know, 2 years. It's a year, 2 years or so. And we planted some of the first cactus there, and we're raising money to actually get this thing terraced and built. And then I just have this like so much love in my heart for this little garden. And so to be able to be there all day with the cactus and with the medicine was really such a treat for me. There's probably nowhere else I would have rather have been. And at first I was like, oh, but maybe I want to be up in my little casita because my little house is so cute and nice and I have everything I need there. But at like, I don't know, an hour into that first day, I was like, oh no, this is the way. This is the perfect way for me. And he said the medicine told him. He had a ceremony. He said, okay, so how's this going to go with Dani? What does she need? What do I need? And this was his first time ever holding a diet container. So he was, asking the medicine for advice. And he said, thank you for bringing me back into relationship with the medicine like that. Because he said he hadn't been connected to it in that way. He's just been doing ceremonies and maybe not asking for advice and guidance so much. But he actually tapped into the medicine in that way. And I guess the medicine told him, bring her to the land. She needs to be around the cactus. So I'm really glad that the medicine told him that. And I had 3 days there like that. So not necessarily in a row, like 2 days in a row, then a day off or 2 days off, and then another day there. And during my day on the land, I would start off after he would leave singing and just kind of waiting for the medicine to come on. And for anybody who's worked with Huachuma, it's not instant. It kind of takes an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for it to be kind of like fully there. So I would start off with singing with my rattle. I brought my altar. We had a tent set up, so I had all my things and my instruments close by. And then I would start working on the land. So in my time there, I was raking and weeding and cleaning up all the little cactus yards. And I'm building paths. Like I was just moving dirt around basically for a while and creating little paths to go to the upper levels. And Miguel came back one day and he was like, God, you really changed the face of this. And so I would kind of work on the land until the medicine kicked in and I was getting a little like heavy in my body and kind of forgetting what I was actually like doing. But then once that happened, I would go lay down in the tent and meditate. And part of the reason why I wanted to be with the medicine in this way, because I didn't want any distractions. I didn't want distractions of the altars or needing to pray or needing to sing or people around or anywhere to walk. I wanted to just sit there and go inside and be with the medicine in a very intense way. Like I kind of wanted to really push the edges of what I know Huachuma to be, so that when I'm working with this, maybe even with others, that I kind of know where they are. And so I can come back even when I'm not at the intensity of that medicine, that edge, I can come back to the fullness of it. And I know what's possible because those pathways have sort of been formed in that way. So that was like part of my intention. And then I would climb up on the land. It's like on this mountainside. And I would climb up and like be on top of the rocks and looking at Apu Linley and sending out prayers for people with my chimes that you gave me. And I was calling it Sonic Cedar. So I'd go up there and just think about people that I love. And I would hit the chimes and just, send it. And then I would come back down. And one of my favorite times was when I was playing all my instruments for the cactus. So I was walking around with my big, cool double flute that I got and playing my harmonica for them and my chacapa and all my chimes, those little chimes you got me. I went around to all the cactus and I played for them and was just giving them all kinds of sound. And and then Miguel would show up and I would be like laying on the ground amongst the cactus or kind of walking around or doing something. And then we would smoke the tobaccos and sort of close the prayer for the day.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like what came up for me in that at the beginning was just remembering that Huachuma is a master plant, like not unlike ayahuasca, really considered to be a master teacher. And so it's interesting, like if you compare the diet practices of like the jungle, they don't diet ayahuasca. They diet other plants and they use ayahuasca as the master plant to connect with those other plants. So it's interesting also to just do a dieta with the master plant itself, with ayahuasca or with Huachuma. I think that's less common than working with more subtle plants. So it's interesting. I actually don't know very many people who have dieted Huachuma in like a specific way. So, the fact that it's sort of being intuited on the fly, I think is part of the way it has to be, because I don't think there's a long tradition of doing that way. I don't know. Did Miguel talk about that?
No, not so much. He just last year when I asked him, we were walking at Apu Chectacaca. I don't know if you remember that last little walk that us three took. I said, Miguel, do you ever do diets with Huachuma? And he's like, yeah, I recommend it. And I was like, okay. He's like, for you, yeah, I recommend it. And then, yeah, he just said it was his first time holding the diet container, and he didn't really talk about anybody else doing it. And when looking online too, to try to just get a little bit of research done before I went, there wasn't really anything at all out there. But I kind of liked that, because then it was like left to my own. There was no like conditioning or narratives or anything I read or anything that was planted in my own mind. It was sort of just, it was all about the connection. And yeah.
What do you feel is the teaching? Usually like after a diet, like with, let's say, a plant, there's like something that comes through, that the plant has delivered, on its promise to teach you. But like maybe it's hard to put into words, but also there's things that come through. So I'm just curious what you got.
Okay, the nugget. So the nugget that I come home with, what the diet has given me, yeah. Well, there's like many little stories that I could tell about the nuggets that I come home with that was really, really beautiful and beneficial. And I guess I'll just start with one of my favorites, which was, my intention was to merge with the consciousness of the cactus. And so one day on the land, I was like sitting up there at what I called Eagle Rock, looking out at Apu Lindley, and I was just like, thank you so much, Huachuma, for everything you've given me, for this moment, for this diet, for whatever, this moment, everything. And then what I heard was, no, thank you. And I was like, thank me. And I felt like it was the medicine sort of talking to me and thanking me. And I said, for what? I drank you. I kind of felt bad about it in a way. And it was like, no, it's good for us to feel what it feels like to be a human. Like, we don't get to laugh and cry and walk and hike and pray and do all these things. We're just sort of in this state of elevated consciousness all the time. And we don't really get to come down to the human level and experience life in this way through your eyes. And I was just thinking, oh, that's really cool. It makes me feel a little less bad about cutting up the cactus to eat it or to drink it. And then I was just sitting there, and there was this merging happening where I was experiencing life as the cactus, and the cactus was experiencing life as me. And I was just watching Apu Lindley, and there was all kinds of sounds and visuals, and it was all just sort of happening. And there wasn't any thought, there wasn't anything. It was just the experiencing. And for me, that was like, oh, that's the merging. Okay. So that was one that I come home with. And I share that because there's a lot of people out there who are probably getting interested in Huachuma. And maybe it'll be helpful to know that it actually wants to work with us. And then I had this thought when I got home. I was like, oh, maybe it's like AI. Maybe it's learning us so that whenever we all continue to work with it, it has like more information so that it can serve us even better. So the more that we drink it and work with it, it like learns the human condition and can help us heal. So that's one of the nuggets.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's so hard to talk about like consciousness, I guess, and consciousness, the way we think about it being such a part of our human experience. We forget that, like everything is really conscious in a way. Every cell in our body is doing things, right? Is constantly alive and doing complex processes that we have no mental control over. So obviously there's consciousness there. It's just beyond our conscious awareness, right? So like to hear you speak about like the cactus consciousness. I think a lot of people sort of dismiss this because they're like, well, cactus doesn't have a brain, and a brain is what makes us conscious. And it's like, that isn't actually something that I identify with. All life, right? All plants even have consciousness, and in some way, maybe even more intelligent than ours, because we're very focused on survival, and that's the way our senses are tuned. Plants, they have possibly even more senses. Like I was talking to one of our friends about this, that there's a whole field studying plants. And, humans have what we have: eyesight, we can hear, most of us, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste. Was like very limited senses, like five, right? And maybe there's like intuition, there's like this telepathic sixth senses, but plants can, do things that we can't do. They can sense radio waves, electromagnetic frequencies that we don't have the ability to sense. They seem to be able to communicate in ways that defy our understanding of communication, like over long distances. They seem to be able to feel, of course, touch, but also probably hear and smell in ways that we can't, in like much more complicated ways. Like there's an experiment that, the roots of a tree will look for water. And a lot of people thought, well, how is it finding the water? Like, is it just, what sense is it using? Of course, like we project our own human experience onto the plant and assume it must be something that we're familiar with. Like it must be seeing, smelling, because that's all we know. But it's probably sensing in a way that we don't even know, because some experiments just played like the sound of water where there's no water underground, and the roots went towards that sound. Well, there's no ear on the roots, so how does it do that? And is it hearing or is it sensing vibration? Like we don't even know. So a lot of, I think what the diet for me is, like when I work with the plant, it's not just like connecting with like the molecules, and the plant brew, but actually, yeah, the consciousness of that plant and the consciousness of Huachuma as a whole is really fascinating to me, because I do feel as though there is this larger consciousness of Huachuma, cactus in general. So it might just not just be the one plant there, but all of the plants. And if there is some kind of shared consciousness going on there, then our relationship with it and our working with it is really fascinating, because you said, maybe it's trying to learn who we are. And I do sense that's true for me. Like the cactus here in the States that are being grown here, even it could be the same species as being grown in Peru, but it's growing around different people. It seems to be different in various ways, and maybe adapting to us or the environment in ways that we really don't understand. So I find that part is like the most fascinating for me, is like the cactus consciousness. And yeah, people that haven't worked with Huachuma, that hear this, they're like, what the heck are these people talking about? But actually, I do feel like when you work with Huachuma, you start to get a sense of what it's like to be a cactus. Like actually, what is their experience, right? And what it feels like. And it feels great. Honestly, it probably is just they're in a state of consciousness all the time that we kind of glimpse when we work with their medicine. Does that resonate for you?
Definitely. definitely resonates. And, a couple of podcast episodes ago, I think we were talking maybe to Ross, and I feel like you threw me a trick question. You were like, what is Huachuma to you? And I was like, well, he's like grandfather and all these things. And I think that was like one level of understanding that I had. But now I really don't. I really feel it as a spirit and as a consciousness fully. I don't know that it's like masculine or I'm sure it has masculine attributes to it, but I definitely feel it as more of a consciousness. And even like everything we do with the Huachuma Foundation and the garden, it's like we're not just being of service to Miguel or the land, we're being in service to this larger cactus consciousness that we get to work with in ceremony. So it feels like we're giving back to that whole thing instead of just a specific part in Peru or just a specific person. It's actually feels way bigger than that.
Hmm. Yeah, like the global consciousness of Huachuma, that's there. And I think that also is part of the teaching that comes through for me when working with Huachuma, is also to remind us that there's a global consciousness of humanity too. And that there's this idea that like our consciousness is separate, and I think this comes from like our schooling and Western science and the way, they want to look at someone's brain under an MRI, like what's going on in their brain. But it kind of isolates our experience to our body, like it's our own experience. Whereas there's a collective consciousness. And I think there's more and more awareness of this, like in the mainstream, like podcasts like the telepathy tapes, for instance, really trying to highlight this, that there's ways that go beyond us individually. Like we can have shared thoughts with people. That's common. You can have a shared experience with even your dog. Like me and my dog, I always joke, I'm like, we have a Bluetooth connection. Like I just know in the middle of the night, if he gets up, like I already am up. He doesn't make any noise, but like we're just connected like that. And so sometimes I actually don't know if it's me or him, I'm like, wait, did I wake up and then you woke up, or did you wake up and then I wake up? Like, cause it's just a shared thing. And I know that mothers experience that with their babies, like a lot of mothers, like the baby doesn't need to ask. They know, like there's this communication happening. So I think part of it is like unique to working with plants in this way, but I guess what I'm getting at is that I think that the plants are just trying to show us that that's the way we are anyway, and that we've forgotten, and so it's really putting us back into our humanity, and that is part of our humanity, right?
Yeah. Yes. And thank you for like pulling the cactus consciousness around to the larger consciousness and like what's available to us. And that's like, if it's okay, that's another thing I kind of want to share about what I come home with is uh like how real everything really felt to me as far as the prayers, like having some stuff on my vision board and watching that come to fruition, and then in real time working with the medicine, and then all of a sudden I'm praying to the waters and it starts sprinkling, or the eagles fly over, or praying to the wind and now my window is banging because the wind just picked up out of nowhere. And it's stuff that sounds maybe kind of crazy as I'm saying it, but to be in the moment and living it, it's like, oh my goodness, this is all so real. Or like Miguel and I leaving the land for the first time after the first, diet ceremony thing. And there's eagles above and the sun is setting and it's like Great Spirit is in the clouds and you can see it and you can feel it all around. And so I remember thinking like, wow, this is really real, not just Huachuma is real, but it was like the practice of praying to the elements and the directions and the altars. Like this is not just something that you and Miguel regurgitate that you heard your teacher say. This isn't just like a performance. This is actually a reality and a way that you can tap into the larger consciousness. And it's possible without even Huachuma present. At like the power of prayer. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to manifest. But the power of prayer was really obvious to me. And then you add in the medicine with it. And like we've talked about this before, but they just potentiate each other. So and I think that's helpful for me as I'm like continuing along this path to not just feel like this is just something I'm hearing you guys say and copying it, but it's coming from a place deep inside me of like my own prayers, but also the belief that the prayers are real and they're working, and Great Spirit, Great Mystery is listening, and the consciousness around us is responding. So I think it's an important step for me as I come forward into like working with the medicine in a deeper way and serving it, that like it's important that I feel that this is real. Yeah. So that was a really big moment, and it's still happening. Like it's still I'm home now, and have been still tapping into that.
Yeah. Well, you're married now to the cactus, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully the teachings continue.
I I think they will. I really do. Um and I guess just to like tie this in a bow, the last thing I just want to talk about is, before I said this was the most radical act of self-love that I've ever experienced. And loving myself has been challenging. I tend to really easily love everything outside of me and kind of put myself last. And not that I don't love myself, but maybe I don't see myself or think I'm worth it, or it's like not even an extra thought. I love so much all the things outside of me. And I did what I call my final exam. So Miguel left early to go to Chavín, where we were going to meet him in Lima and then do the bus and go there, which I'm sure we'll get into that story next. But he left me there for a couple days by myself. So I thought, okay, well, I have a couple days. I don't really want to like go into town and keep eating. I don't really want to go meet up with friends. I still felt very raw and very in this container. So I decided to have my own ceremony. So I went to town, bought myself a cactus, cooked it in the way that he taught me, and then had myself a day. And that was a beautiful day. That was the one where the eagles came in the second altar, and the air came in the third altar, and the sun was coming up, and it was all misty and smoky for the first altar. It was like the most magical day ever. But then in the fourth altar, before I started praying, I decided this altar was gonna be dedicated to me. There's nobody else around, nobody else I want to send it to. It just felt like a way for me to close this container and sort of make it about me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to leave this cedar prayer for me. And I start talking to myself as if I'm like my higher self, talking to this personality of Dani. And I was just honestly sobbing, telling myself, I'm so proud of you, and I know you mess it up, but probably more often than you don't, but you keep going, and you have so many beautiful people around you. And I was just really loving myself. And I went on, with the cedar for me, which was really probably something I'll never forget. Felt like a milestone for me. And I felt like, wow, I've been working with these altars for about 5 years now, 4 years pretty intensely, and thinking it was all about the altars, sending the prayers and sending it and praying to them, praying to all of these things outside of me, but also knowing I have all the altars within me. And just to think where all this devotion and dedication led me. And by the way, it was like every day, like creating sound ceremonies about the water or about clarity, or yoga classes all about the fire, and like really not taking a day off from this, even just if it's like a small intention. And where it led me was on my knees in front of my altar, praying to myself. It was like such a moment, like, oh my God, I thought I was praying to all of these things outside of me. And it just led me back to me. And what a beautiful thing, because I didn't even know where any of this was going to lead me. Like studying the water, studying this prayer to clarity or whatever altar it was in. I had no expectations. It was purely about the practice. I didn't, ever think I would be dieting the medicine or know that that was going to come up or anything. And it just really taught me that like, it's not even about where you think things are going to lead you. It's about the practice and being in the moment with the prayers. And that is the destination. Like that is where we're trying to get. And if I had any assumptions or expectations about where all of this was going to lead me, then it probably would have stifled that moment that I had. And it probably wouldn't have been as sweet and as impactful as it was. So yeah, it was just a lesson in like stay in the moment, stay in the practice, and just let it take you, where it's going to take you. And that's actually a lesson from the Bhagavad Gita that I remember really, that struck me. And it was about doing the work in the moment without worrying about the outcome. And if you're present, that's like you're in the God frequency. If you're present with it and you're in that creative mode and process without worrying about it, then the end result is going to be that God frequency and that presence. But if you, yeah, anyway, I don't know. It's kind of hard to put into words, but it was a very big moment and lesson for me, to me. And it's great. And now I come home and I'm seeing all the ways that I don't love myself. So this is like how the ceremony for me happens is like I come back home and I'm seeing all the ways that I'm not in alignment with my heart and all the things that I do to treat myself not so nicely. And so it's been a big month of awareness for me and like, oh, I actually, when I'm here, I have to really work on rewiring all of these things that I do and all these patterns that I'm in that aren't so self-lovey.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I agree on the self-love part. I feel like this is if you want to just cut to the chase on what it's all about, what our journey here on earth, a lot of it is about is to come into to love ourselves, really. Um, because that's hard. Yeah, it's hard, right? I just want to say on one of the things you mentioned, which is the path, like there's this, I think it's kind of evolving, but there's this sort of relationship that comes from the West. I'll say the West, like just the United States, for example, of people entering plant medicine spaces where it's very goal oriented, where it's very much like, okay, what's my intention? What am I going to get out of this? Like, what is this doing for me? And if it's not doing something for me, then actually I'm not allowed to do this. There's this self-shaming. So I think subconsciously there's this need to justify working with plant medicine. And this is a big conversation, but I think it does come from lack of self-love, which comes from cultural shaming around certain things and maybe just religious stuff too, that's like embedded within our society, but then people wanting something out of the experience that they can, quantify, label, bottle, and say, this is what I got out of it. And also, if they keep going back into plant medicine spaces, to know that they're on the path to somewhere, that there is a destination, right? It's like the pot at the end, or the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, that like, if you continue to work with Huachuma, ayahuasca, then you keep going, then you do all these dietas, then you're getting closer to something, right? Do you sense that is there in the consciousness, that is there? It's like embedded. It's almost like not even acknowledged, but it's the way it is. It's like the paradigm. And for me, I'm more like trying to dissolve paradigms. So I'm a little bit like, well, why is that framework even there in our consciousness that we think like coming to pray with Huachuma, going to a ceremony and you're going to keep going and we're going to keep getting closer to some pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and if we don't get there, we're going to shame ourselves that it's not working and our prayers aren't working, and like I see this over and over, and it's not our fault. I mean, I think we enter these relationships already with that framework there, and then it's not dissolved, by a lot of the spaces that we enter. So like I had to kind of dissolve this for myself at some point. And it really was that recognition, like what you just described, which is that this is the pot of gold. Like we already have it, all of the prayers that we've made have been answered. I mean, we are living the answer to our prayers now. If this teaches us anything, it's that if we want to change something, we need to change how we're calling things into our lives. And ultimately the things that we want to change usually center on us not allowing ourselves to have what we want, that we are the ones standing in the way, right? And that's the biggest obstacle, is to figure out, like, why are we doing that? Why are we blocking ourselves? And Huachuma is like a very clear teacher, like in that respect, which is, it just kind of shows you right away, like very clearly, like, okay, here, this is you. This is, you love yourself and feel it. And then, yeah, it's easy to come out of that space and you get all the protector parts coming back and you get all the programming coming back. But at least you've touched it, you know it's there, and you can move forward with that. But I guess what I'm getting at is, like, even the way that we framed this discussion, and I kind of set it up that way, but it was sort of intentional, which is like, well, what do you get out of this diet? You know? Like, even that, like, framework I set up that way, I think that that framework too is just not, it's not something I attach to. That there's value in just connecting with the plants. There's value in just going to a ceremony. I think that also there's value in creating a practice around something. And these practices, for me, they really are a way of life. Like the example, I gave it in a call recently, but maybe like another example that would be easier is, like, let's say like somebody decides they've never tried yoga. So they're going to go to a yoga retreat, you know, and then they go on a yoga retreat and it's the first time. So everything's new. They're trying all the poses. They obviously can't do it, but they get something out of it, right? And then they go back home and they're like, you know, their life feels a little bit different, but they don't continue the practice and they don't ever practice, you know, yoga except on retreats once a year. Is that really going to do a lot? I mean, it's almost ridiculous to think that way. You know, you can see it with yoga very easily. Like, that would be ridiculous, you know, to think that you go in once a year and practicing yoga is the way to do it. No, I mean, anyone that practices yoga, and I taught yoga and practiced for years, tells you it's a practice. You better commit to it and you better incorporate it. And it is the path, right? Like, it is the thing. Like, there's nothing beyond there. You know, you don't get a prize at the end that says, like, you made it. You're already reaping the rewards by doing the practice. That's what it is. And Patabi Joyce used to say, you know, for whatever it's worth, and I acknowledge that he's human and there's a lot of things about him that maybe aren't true, but one thing he used to say was, do your practice and all is coming. Just show up and do your practice. That's it. Like, quit looking so far for everything. It's right there. That's it. And so, like, there, like you describe, it's like such a big realization that I think people don't really have it all the time. It's just like, you're there. That's it. That's what it is. The pot of gold is that. I mean, you know, you're not going to get to some point where you levitate off this planet. If we're lucky, we may, you know, continue to plant our prayers in ways that are more intentional and live the lives that we are happier with, but we'll always have to keep returning to our practice too. And sort of like, whatever that practice is, you know, we have to cultivate it if we want to, you know, see any kinds of fruit from it. So anyway, I just spoke a lot, but like, I just wanted to reflect back the self-love piece, which, amazing. I mean, if that's even a part of what somebody gets out of a diet, that's worth every second, you know, every hardship that went into it.
Yeah, thanks for that reflection. The practice is so good, and then I come home and I'm still working in the practice in my own way. And like, my God, this is grounding me so much into what I know and feel to be true. When I came back home and life was like pretty intense for me, but then I came to my altar and was there doing my prayers, and I'm like, okay, this feels like truth for me, and that feels like where I need to get right now, is just right there on my knees in front of my altar. And I just want to say something that you spoke about, how I think it's maybe our culture, how it's not so much about the practice, but it's like what the practice is going to get us, or having this thing like we're going to get something out of it. I have to be honest, I came into this diet thinking that a little bit, at least for a couple days, like the first 2 warm-up ceremonies and then the first day. I was waiting for this profound moment to happen, like that I was going to get struck by lightning or an eagle would walk up and hand me a feather. And I was kind of waiting for this big, huge, what people talk about with diets. And I was like really stifling my experience and judging my experience. And it wasn't coming from a way like I want to tell a good story. It was like, I want to do a good job for my teachers and for the medicine and for my prayers. Like I want to just really show up and go all in. And I had this feeling like if I'm not getting hit by lightning, then I'm not doing it right. And so I was really judging it. And then one day on the land, I just was, I think, working and shoveling and doing whatever I was doing, forgetting about what I was thinking about. And I stopped for a moment and was just like very present. And it was almost, I don't know if I saw it or thought it or how it actually came into my mind's eye, but it was like this portal opened, almost as if you were burning a hole through paper. And it was like this portal opened. And in there was the whole universe. Like I kind of like looked in and it was like this whole universe. And the portal was the present moment. And like in that whole thought process after that was like, oh, everything, the whole universe, everything we could ever want and ever connect to and ever want the answers to, everything that we are and have is right here within this portal of the moment. And and that was like the most profound teaching. I mean, is the moment, it's all we have. So, and then it happened. I finally let go of thinking that it needed to be this whole big thing. And then and the moment is so subtle. It's like so subtle that if we're not really in tune with it, then we could miss it, could miss all that we have. So I just wanted to speak to that because I totally started off, and I've had other ceremonies too, where I'm judging my experience and wanting it to be whatever. And I think it's because of how we're conditioned here, in America to get something and to show something for ourselves. And if we're putting our time and money in there, like we can't just come back and go, I felt really connected. And that's for some reason doesn't hit as hard here as it does in Peru. It makes a lot more sense there. So I came in with that and left totally like got my ass kicked a little bit by that.
Yeah. After the ecstasy, the laundry,
Yeah.
coming back to earth after these peak experiences. But I think that's part of it too, right? Like that's where we see with clarity the pieces of our life that no longer feel aligned, or maybe they feel dissonant and we've lost connection with them. So that's also like valuable, the hard landings.
Yes. Okay, so that's kind of that. Is there anything else you want to ask me about the diet before we go into Chavín things?
No, let's talk about Chavín, because so you wrapped up your diet. You had 2 days. You did your own ceremony, and then that was all April until June, basically, essentially, because I came June 3rd to Lima. So this is where we end up connecting in Lima. It's like on June 4th, and we're all going to Chavín. So that's where the story picks up.
Yeah. And thank you for letting me say my piece about the diet. It's part of it I wanted to get off of my heart. But then when you guys arrived, when we were with you and our other friend and finally met up with Miguel, it was kind of like, okay, the next phase, the next chapter of this is here. And yeah, we met in Lima and then headed off to Huaraz on maybe your favorite bus ride of your whole life.
The second favorite, the favorite was on the way back, maybe. But yeah, just to bring everybody up to speed. So Chavín, for those who haven't been immersed in Huachuma for very long, is where the ancient temple is, where there's there's evidence of Huachuma being used thousands of years ago. And so it is sort of a pilgrimage for people that are deep in the Huachuma space to go to Chavín. And and just be with that. And so we had asked Miguel to go, and he was all game for it. And then a bunch of people decided to come. So we had a group of like 10 people, I think, in the end. And yeah, I'll spare everybody the complaints, but I will just put out like one big complaint, I guess, is that I'm very tall and big, and Peru is not made for people my size. And anybody that is above 6 feet, I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. And if you are at all my size, you are not going to be comfortable in Peru. So just know that. And the buses, no matter what they say, they are not made for people that size. So yes, it was not comfortable to travel, and that's all I'll say about that. It will probably be comfortable for smaller people, and I'm just an outlier in that country. But yeah,
But
we
it's a
went
kind
overnight. We went overnight to Huaraz, which is in the north, and then a 3-hour taxi to Chavín, which is up in the mountains. Chavín is a lot bigger than I thought. I thought like there's going to be some tiny town. Actually, it's fairly decent sized town. There's the archaeological site and there's all this stuff. And I think the important parts of the trip to highlight for me are that we did have the opportunity to do a ceremony inside the temple. And I think that would be helpful to talk about with people, don't you? Just to explain, because I went in with a lot of questions in my mind, like, how is this going to work? Like, is there a way that you do this? Like, you buy a ticket and you just tell the ticket office, like, yeah, we're doing ceremony, or is it like a special ceremony ticket? And so all those questions were answered once we got there. So I guess I'll just go into it then, if you want me
yeah.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
so to shortcut it, no, there's no ceremony ticket. If you do ceremony inside the temple grounds, you are going to be buying a ticket just like the general public. We did get to the ticket office early before the temple grounds had opened. I think the thinking Miguel had was that maybe since the guards are there, we can just pay them off and get in early. And there were guards there behind the gate. They didn't seem keen on doing that. So we paid and then we went in, and you probably, people listening have heard us talk about the structure of the ceremonies, but Miguel, practices with the 4 doorways, the 4 altars. So throughout the day, there'll be 4 altars opened. Altar is a complicated word. It's not like a church altar like that. It's more like a door. And you think of it like the directions. So anyway, the way that we did it was that we opened the altars outside, just finding places to do it. And then between each of the 4 altars, Miguel said, after we open each altar, we're going to go into the temple. So we went into the temple 4 times, essentially. So like in and out, and then went to a different part. And so that was kind of the structure, which was kind of cool, because I was sort of wondering, like, how are we going to do this? Like, where are we going to do the altars? And yeah, and there's like a whole aspect to it too, that makes it very distracting, I think, for me, which is that there was fireworks happening every 20 minutes, like really loud, right overhead. There was drumming from some kind of festival. There are tourists who are also there, just visiting the site, and they are not taking Huachuma. Then you've got all the guards who are whistling with whistles to call people out. It almost feels like a soccer match where it's like, oh no, you stepped where you shouldn't step. Then you get a whistle, And so you're kind of navigating a lot of things. Like, as far as like spaces go to do a ceremony, this is a very challenging space, I would say. So I wouldn't recommend it for people who are new to Huachuma. This should not be your first Huachuma ceremony. But for us, being experienced, I think we were able to deal with all of those distractions and try to connect with the temple. Anything to add there, Dani, that I missed?
Well, I'll just, I guess, just like an overview of how I walked into it was, Chavín has been on my vision board for the last maybe 3 years since I heard about this place. And so going there and seeing the temple and the ruins for the first time for me was like, I was a little bit starstruck and kind of just so excited and ready to be there. And it sort of felt in a way that the medicine wanted me to commit in a deeper way before I could actually go there. And I could see how when we first got there, it was almost like, okay, now you're ready to come here and experience this. And I'm glad that the medicine or the Chavín made me wait because it was definitely worth it. But, I guess I didn't have as many questions as you. I was just like, I want to go and I just trust however it's going to go, it's going to go. Because now that you're saying all that, I'm like, yeah, it would have been really weird for us to be like in the temple singing and rattling and there's other tourists trying to also see the temple, but we're in there doing our thing. So yeah, and like now looking back, I'm like, oh, I could see why you had so many questions about this. But I think it went really beautifully and we had a wonderful group just to start, just to say, just to start the energy. It's really incredible to just be there.
What is your takeaway from the ceremonies in Chavín? Like you go in with this starstruck, wow, but like, what's your impression? Like, what do you feel about that place?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like another "what did I get out of it" question.
No, you don't have to. Yeah, I don't want to frame it that way, but I'm just like, what's your impression of Chavín? Like,
Um,
what do you think about it now? I mean, I'm sure it's different and changing, evolving, but you had the before and then what's the reality?
well, I think because I was so starstruck, it was actually almost hard for me to go into a deep emotional process about it. I was just there and like feeling the temple and feeling like I felt different frequencies and sounds and wind and like I definitely felt things. But I want to go back again because now that I kind of have that first like, oh my God, I'm at Chavín feeling gone, then I can go in and go a bit deeper. But I feel like I've had ceremonies where I go through a bigger process in a way. And maybe it's because there were like tourists around and other things, or maybe because I was like very starstruck being there. But I could feel myself, just sort of looking at everything. And, it made me just question like, what did they do in here? And I feel like you could feel the prayers. Like when we walked up to the falcon doorway or something, a falcon flew overhead, and for me, that's like part of that wonderful web of Huachuma doing its thing. But I feel like you could feel the devotion of some kind, whatever they were devoting themselves to other than the Lanzone. But even Huachuma and the medicines that they worked with and darkness and depriving your senses and doing all the different things that they did. I think it just kind of left me with more questions. And I remember looking at the cabezas clavas, I think they call them, the heads and the transformation that the head goes through. I thought that was really interesting because then it's like, oh, well, is this an energetic transformation or a real transformation? So yeah, it kind of just left me with more questions and made me want to go deeper. And maybe even more isolated, like maybe no altars, just sit there with the medicine in the temple and be like really undisturbed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's complicated. The place itself is really fascinating. And I think I would want to go back and not take Huachuma, honestly, and just spend more time being with the temple. I think the ceremony aspect made it much more complicated, in my personal opinion, to connect because it's like there's so much stimulation, and like with Huachuma, at least for me, I become very sensitive, and I don't need the Huachuma to become sensitive. I'm already hypersensitive. So the things that really were powerful for me, when we, after the first altar, we did go in and we had opportunities, each of us, to go crawl as close as we could to the lanzón. The lanzón is this giant granite, I think it's granite, monolith carving of what they say is the deity that the Chavín culture prayed to. So you get to sit there and look at it, and it feels very alien to me. And even the shapes and the way that it's constructed does not really look like things that I've seen before. It looks very foreign. I think that the carvings in Chavín in general do look like Picasso. Somebody pointed that out to us, that the Cubist style that Picasso was influenced by, I can see that for sure. But the lanzón is like asymmetrical and it's this odd shape. And I wonder about it. Like, when you're with Huachuma medicine and you're sitting there and you see this thing, so much of it doesn't make sense. There's just a lot of like, what? Like, what is this? Like, why? Whoa. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's the teaching, which is, whoa. Like, they really went out of their way. This would not have been easy for them to create this back then. And so it must have had a lot of meaning for them. And then at the same time, like when we're looking at the lanzón, there's a guard who's making sure, you don't take photos, right? So you've got this kind of, okay, I'm deep in the medicine, connecting. Okay, yes, I won't take photos. Then there's like other tourists coming, and the thing about it was just so hard. That part where it's like I can't settle into any place. And so anyway, I guess I'll bring that up because that actually was the biggest teaching for me. Overall, was that I live in a state of fear really around authority. And this, this is way beyond the scope of this discussion. But like being a person born in Texas, but like with the Middle Eastern sounding name. And then, living in a country that, went through 9/11 and a lot of feelings around Middle Eastern cultures here, I've experienced a lot of what I would consider discrimination and prejudice, and, started early, name calling and things like that. And also then, having the experience of being unable to fly after 9/11, for instance, because my name like matched something, or like I got on some list, and there's a whole story to that. And then like even going to Peru, like the last 2 years, every time I go to Peru now, I have to go see Interpol, the police station, because my name flags as like a warrant out for my arrest. And I've contacted Interpol, all this stuff. They say, well, it's nothing we can do. And they let me in. But there's also this fear. It's like, why do I have to go to the police station, right? Like, why do I have to go through that? Nobody else has to go through this. So I have this like underlying fear all the time. And of course, I became an attorney and I dealt with law enforcement and that. And so anyway, just to wrap this in, like my personal lived experience is one where I would not defy authority very easily because I'm scared. Like I wouldn't go into a temple and try to do a ceremony that's not allowed, just because my nervous system is set to be like, don't do that. That's just too painful, right? So here we are doing that. and the guards, and like other people didn't have my life experience, so maybe they don't experience that. But that was like coming up a lot for me, which is like, whoa, getting whistled at, or like there was other times, like we were at an altar where the guards were like really trying to get us to stop the singing, and like leave, right? They were upset. One of whistling, but then we wouldn't listen. And then so he came and was like trying to talk to people in our group, get them to make eye contact. I was like avoiding eye contact because I'm like, I am not going to look at the guard because I do not want to have this interaction. So I just looked straight ahead and acted like he wasn't standing there. And our friend, poor guy, made eye contact. Then he got sucked into it. Then Miguel got sucked into it. And, then it's like, the guard saying, you need to leave. And Miguel's like, oh, just 5 more minutes, and the guard leaves us. But then the feeling was still there. Like, oh my God, we're breaking the rules. We're breaking the rules. But the biggest breakthrough for me was at that altar where that guard did that, because right as the guard was trying to tell us to stop, our friend had the rattle and the stick. And I looked at him and he was like, what do I do? Like he didn't know what to do. So he just started rattling, like playing and singing as loud as he could. And it was so powerful. And like the songs that he was singing, like he sang this one song, which got really a lot of movement during what is it called? The Standing Rock protests in the United States, where they were going to build that Keystone Pipeline and the tribes were protesting. And I think this song became like the anthem. It's a Water is Life song. And so he's like singing about this, which is a protest song. Of course, it's a protest about like power, like coming in and trying to destroy nature and all this. But we were also in this position where this person of authority was trying to get us to stop our prayer, and he just sang louder. And it was just so powerful to me, because I realized like, a lot of the fear I have is totally unwarranted, because when he started singing louder, the guard just went away. It's just like left us like, well, I guess that's that. It was sort of like, wow, we can fight authority, and we can fight without fighting. We just have to sing and pray like loudly in their face, and it makes them uncomfortable and they just go away. So that was like a big lesson for me. And I still like carry that was part of it, was like, I got so much out of the fact that we were violating the rules, because I think I just needed to violate some rules. And see that it's okay.
I love that. I remember that moment, and I just, I get goosebumps every time you tell that story, because what a profound sort of turnaround for you and perspective for you to take as he was singing that song from the top of his lungs. And like, what a cool thing to think. It's like loving like loving your way through, like protesting with like love and sort of loudness, but not fighting with I guess words, but like singing your prayers as loud as you can, and the darkness kind of retreats in a way. That's such a good one, Hamid.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge for me because I was an attorney, and I think I became an attorney largely because of this feeling of injustice that's carried me from when I was younger, and not knowing how to deal with that feeling of injustice. You feel like I need to be able to remedy things, right? So like being an attorney gives you some power to like, do things, but it never actually felt good. Honestly, it felt like I was like in the wrong environment doing like I still want to remedy things, but I just don't want to do it in court. Guy in a robe and all this, it just felt off. But that moment was like, well, that's the way I want to do it. I just want to sing to these people. So that was really powerful. I mean, there's so many things about the ceremony that were super powerful. I think that the other thing that really stands out for me was it was after that altar, and we had gone into one of the chambers, and then we came out, and that same guard, I think, that had been like trying to tell us to not do things was just sitting there on his phone, like scrolling on his phone. And Miguel went up to him and was asking him whether we could do the next altar on this grassy area. Cause like, I think we already made him mad, right? So let's just like make sure he knows that we respect him. And he looked at where Miguel was pointing. He's like, no, you cannot go there. Like, that's definitely not allowed. And then so Miguel's like, okay. So then Miguel's like, well, are there any dark chambers we can go in? Because all the chambers are lit with LED lights for the tourists so you don't run into stuff. And part of the magic of the temple, Chavín, was that it's like a sensory deprivation spot, right? So the guard like looks up from his phone, like now he's paying attention and is like, oh yeah, there are many dark chambers. And so then Miguel like starts giving him kind of like puppy dog eyes. It's like, yeah, like we'd like to see them. And the guard's like, yeah, you would, And so monetary terms, I think, were mentioned just briefly, and then swift as can be, he escorts us into a place where we had already been. And then there's a barricade that says like, do not go in here. And it's just like this tiny little doorway. Like you'd never think to go in there anyway. And the guard is like using his flashlight, like telling us, go in there. Right. And it's completely dark. And so I don't know, we go in and it's like a stairway that's going down, like really steep. You got to watch your head. It's not built for people my size, of course. And we crawl like one layer below where we were. So now, my God, like these chambers, these temples really have undiscovered chambers that probably go a lot deeper than that too. But now we're like a whole floor underneath where we were. And you can see up where we came in, there's like a little bit of light. It's not much because that chamber was only lit by like small LED lights. It's not very bright. And now we're in like complete darkness. And then there's all these other passageways. And it's totally dangerous because you can't see anything. So some of our group, there's 10 of us, goes like one way into this chamber and just sits in there and sits down. And then you and I and a couple other people were kind of like sitting like at the entrance at the bottom of the staircase, right, where we went in. And that was the moment where we had that opportunity to experience Chavín without the lighting, and it's quiet, and it was so quiet. Like when we all sat, 10 of us, like you could kind of hear your own breathing, probably feel your own heartbeat, and every sound was so loud because there was no background sound. It was really powerful.
Yeah, I felt that too. I earlier I talked about hearing sounds, and they have these little black windows that you could look into, and at some of them I could hear this frequency, almost as if you could hear like something plugged into the wall charging. I was like tuning into some sort of sound or frequency. But then when we were down there in the dark chamber, there really wasn't even that going on. It was almost just like this breathing or this like deep pulsing and sort of like that. But it was really dark, and I couldn't wait to get down there. And I actually want to spend more time there. But, what happened down in that chamber was probably one of the best moments of maybe our whole trip in Peru, because it was so funny. And just every time I think about it, it makes me giggle, because it was like one of those moments where we were probably not supposed to be laughing, but then ended up laughing, and it kind of just like made it funnier. But I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, so we're sitting under there, and obviously Miguel has paid the guard. Like this is like a big privilege. We've been granted entry to like the place. So Miguel and a bunch of people are sitting in the dark. I have no idea what they're doing because it's completely pitch black. Like you cannot see them. But I assume that they're sitting in there connecting with the place, right? And that's what we're doing. We're sitting in there connecting. So we're doing that as well. And just kind of sitting, and like I can hear the breath. Like if I remember I had to like cough a little bit. And it was so like, oh my God, I'm disturbing the peace. But then we're sitting in that silence. And yeah, there's this feeling that came to me, which was like, whoa, this is why they built the place, because there's no place outside of there that you could experience no sound. Like what you have when you're outside the temple is the river, the birds, the wind, all of this. So like even just the isolation of this little space would have created a place where they could feel and experience things in a way that, that's a technology. Like sensory deprivation is a technology. So it's dark and quiet and all of that. And so we're there with that experience. And then above us where we came in is just this faint light from the hallway, in this upper chamber. And as we're sitting there, some young teenage girls walk to that doorway where now, there's a sign that says you can't pass. So they say like, oh, look, you can't pass in there. That's dangerous. So we're like looking and we can see them, but they can't see us because we're in the complete black. And one of them takes her phone with the light, the flashlight on it, and starts shining it down at us, right? And that's the first time I could see you, because now there's a light on you and you're just like crouched like this, like looking up at them. And I lost it, because like there's no way that those girls were not scarred by what they saw, which was some kind of creature. So I just lost it. I started laughing so hard, but then I tried to hold it back, right? Because like I didn't want them up there to hear it, and I didn't want to disturb everybody. So at first it was just like this laugh that was like muffled, like, and the girls heard it and they're like, oh, there's something there, like there's something there, right? Like they freaked out. And then other people started making sounds, and then they quickly stopped, because like we didn't want to make noise. And then there was just so much energy. Like I was just like, oh my God, like there's so much energy that has to come out. And the girls were still up there like going like, oh, there's something in there. And so all that could come out of me was meow. And I meowed like a cat. And then the whole group of like 10 people that were all meditating peacefully just lost it. And everybody started cracking up. Because I don't think actually people realized what was happening, like they didn't know that some girl had spotted us or anything. But they just heard the meow. And then it was like uncontrollable, right? Like uncontrollable laughter, which sometimes happen. And then I felt bad because I'm like, my God, Miguel paid all this money for us to be down here meditating and connecting in silence, and I ruined it with laughter. But it was awesome. I thought it was funny. It was one of the funniest things, just like to see the girl's face and like how shocked she was that there was something in there. Like, that's priceless.
Oh, that will forever be funny. And I remember like as soon as we would stop laughing and kind of get it together and get it out, it'd be like 3 seconds. And then one of us would just like burst out, and it was just like kept getting funnier and funnier. And because we were kind of like in trouble a little bit, it was like that was even funny too. And because we weren't supposed to be disturbed. So the whole thing was amazing.
Right. And one of my goals in life is to get Miguel to laugh in a ceremony, because he's so serious.
I know.
Just like sometime he's going to lose it. That didn't happen that time.
It would have been a good time because we couldn't see him anyway.
I feel he was. Even though I couldn't see him, I think he was laughing on the inside.
I think it was so funny. How could he not?
Yeah. So that was a highlight. Definitely unexpected. The day closed. I think that part too also stands out to me. Like we closed in the same place where we opened the first altar and the last altar, which is by the river in this little enclosure. And I think that we started the fourth altar around 4:00, 3:34, and I think that the temple closes at 4. Like the archaeological site actually is like you got to be out by 4 kind of thing. But before we get there, there was a point where like everybody was really in the medicine, and I would say that one of the things that was unique about that is that the medicine was so strong, very strong for me, and there were other people that were clearly on Huachuma, kind of laying around or just like it was. By the end of the day, it was kind of like a free for all. It looked like, oh well, there's some cactus people over there. There's some over there, like people wearing like Burning Man style outfits, like sunglasses. And I thought, oh wow, we don't have the cool glasses. Like we're not really fit to be here. But there was some funny things like that. Just kind of seeing the other people was funny and interesting, I would say. But yeah, we did close, and that whole thing with authority kept going on. Like, okay, we're breaking the rules because the temple's obviously closing. And if anybody ever goes to a ceremony with Miguel, they start to realize he's very patient. And like, even if the final altar is gonna leave us without a ride home because the van's leaving or the temple is closing, he will not end early. Actually, it's more just the opportunity to slow down and really be with that. And so, it starts to slowly get dark to the point where by the time we finished the final altar, it was pitch black. Like, excuse me, like you couldn't see anything. And I think it was like 7 p.m. by then. And so like even there was somebody in our group who was way more concerned. I wasn't that concerned because I'm like, well, we're a big group, like, and I knew that I had watched at the beginning of the day that the gate at the front opens from the inside. So it's like one of those exit type doors where you could always get out. So I was like, even if they left, we can still get out. We're not locked in. And somebody had expressed concern to me, like, oh my God, are we locked in like all night? And I was like, no, the gate opens from the inside. But there was that, and then leaving and the stars. It was so dark that night. You see the stars as we're walking through the archaeological park, after it's closed. And I think it was funny to see the guards. They're like watching the World Cup or soccer. The World Cup was like happening at some point while we were there. And they're just watching the game, and then here come 10 people just, like 3 hours after the park's closed, and we just leave, and they open the door for us. It's like, go. Yeah, it was powerful. I think the one thing that I also, this is a proposal, not that I have any control over it. They really do need to have a day or a ticket that is specially for people who are doing ceremony. Like they could have a day that's like, well, Mondays is just ceremony people day. And during that day, we're not going to let people from the public, and we're going to dim the lights or something like that. And they just make it a little bit more, because everybody's doing it anyway. So I think that they could just do that, and that would make it a little bit better of a place to do ceremony, because it does have that feel like we're doing ceremony in a museum, and we just like dropped in, and we're not really supposed to be doing it, but we're doing it. And you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And maybe that's, I think earlier in your Chavín recap, you were talking about how it was like very stimulating, the people around, the lights, the guards, the whistles. And I don't know if I related to it in that way, and having it be a little bit overstimulating, like you can't really drop super, super deep in. Whereas if you're just out in nature and there's like no lights and no people and no whistles, there's just birds around you, and that kind of lends itself where you can like go in really deep. But I think it is a bit stimulating to be in a museum slash historical site, tourist kind of thing where people are buying tickets to get in. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that we did the best that we could with what we had. And I would definitely go back. And you mentioned the stars. That was one of the best night skies I have ever seen. It was so dark, but then as soon as maybe because of the light pollution, but as soon as we left the gate, the stars weren't as bright in the sky, but maybe because the street lights or something, probably. But when we were in Chavín leaving, it was and I'm such a star person, so I really am always looking up at the sky, and that was a pretty beautiful blessing that I feel like the sky was given us for the prayers that we sent that day.
Yeah. Yeah, Chavín is a beautiful place. The nature, the river, everything about it is really beautiful. The next to the temple, there's a sanctuary that we did visit. We visited the museum, I think, the next day, and also this sanctuary with this woman who I just want to give a huge shout out to, because she owns a restaurant in town and she's been planting Huachuma there. She said since 2006, I want to say, or 2008. I don't remember, but it was like 18 to 20 years. And we have photos, excuse me, we have photos somewhere. And it's like very inspiring to see what that consistent planting has done. And she's got thousands of huge, beautiful Huachuma now. And it's probably one of I don't know, it's the most beautiful garden I've ever been in, probably, just for everything, just the way that she's done it. And her name is Ingrid. She's just amazing that she gave us a tour and opportunity to see the land. And that, I think, was, I don't know, I'd rather just go hang out there than go to a museum like any day.
Oh, that's a good idea. To go back and do ceremony there amongst all those big, huge cactus and so like that. Would you say there was like thousands or hundreds? Thousands, yeah.
She's easily thousands, yeah.
Thousands.
Definitely.
And they're all massive, like way over our heads and just so big and so healthy and so happy. You can just tell that they're loved. And I think maybe in a conversation you said you can tell that the prayer is very strong with this woman because of how well the cactus are growing and just how beautiful the land is. And that was really like maybe one of my favorite parts of going to Chavín was going there. And it was kind of cool for us to see the place that inspired Miguel to build his garden in the Sacred Valley. He said that last time he was there, he like looked across and you can see it actually when you're in Chavín in the temple, you can see it through the trees and there's all these like cactus heads sticking out. And he was like, wait, are those cactus over there? And then he went and saw it and he said he had never seen it done like that before. And it just sort of gave him permission in a way to see that, well, somebody's doing it. Like, why can't I do it? And so, I don't know, it was kind of a moment for him to take us there and see the inception point of what we've been working towards with the garden.
Yeah, I've never seen them planted in that way. And it's interesting, that's a whole nother discussion, but she has them planted in very precise rows and like organized in this way that you would think, like when you see Huachuma in the wild, I know this maybe didn't cross your mind, but it crossed my mind. When you see Huachuma in the wild, it tends to grow arms from the base. So it branches from the base and that creates these big wide stands where there's like all these arms going up, but they're coming from more of a contained point on the bottom, but the actual plant gets very big, like very wide. And so like if you plant right next to each other, all of these, what she's done, you would think that that would create this situation where they're all crowded, but actually it looks to me like they figured out and they know where they stand and they just started to grow in these perfect columns, like all next to each other. And it's really spectacular. Like I've never seen Huachuma planted in that way. and it's so precise, like every row and everything. And they're all just incredibly healthy. Like I was looking, I was like, there's no unhealthy plant here. They're all pristine. Like usually you see Huachuma has like bugs eating it and think, no, like all of hers are just like picture perfect, and the grounds and everything. So yeah, you can tell that those cactus love being there. And she also loves them. I mean, obviously that is like a labor of love. Like nobody's coming and giving you a certificate, to do that. She's just been doing it. And I guess her and her husband do ceremonies there, right, in that space. And we got to see their space, which is actually part of the temple grounds, which I think that's the most interesting part, is that at one point it was all connected. You can see there's like remnants of temple on her land, these big granite pieces. So in some way that is the temple. It's just the garden area, like in a way. And it's almost more peaceful because there's not, the tourist aspect to it. So maybe one day, I know that she facilitates with her husband. We'd have to go to their ceremony there, which I'd probably be open to if we were ever invited. But that was another highlight. And then, not to go on and on, because I think we should probably wrap this call up soon, but we went from Chavín to Huaraz, back to Huaraz, did a hike there, a ceremony, which was still the hardest ceremony I have ever done. And I don't know if we need to get into all of it, but I'm still bearing the battle wounds from that, which was, a broken toenail and smashed my foot. And just the fact that I made it, I was happy. But that one, without being acclimated, I think at that point, I still had been in Peru less than a week. We were up way above 10,000 feet. I just remember not being able to breathe. It's a place called Churup, which we have photos, and we'll probably end up sharing those too, I assume, on our Instagram or some other place so people can check them out. Incredibly beautiful place to do ceremony if you're acclimated, I would say. And you were already acclimated, so you had a little bit of a better time than I did.
Yeah, but you made it.
Yeah, there's a funny thing about that one, which is like when the van dropped us at the bottom and it says Churup Lagoon, right? There's like a little trail and it starts leading up, and it's just this like nice paved trail, but it's uphill. But going uphill on that trail is really hard when you're not acclimated because you're like at 10,000 feet. And so we're just going up this trail, like climbing for maybe an hour. I mean, I had to sit down. We sat down, me and my friend who was also not acclimated, take a break. And we're going and we keep going. At some point, this guy like hikes really fast past us, and he looked like he was wearing some kind of uniform or something. Well, anyway, come to find out, he was the guy that worked at the ticket office, because we had to hike for an hour and a half just to get to the place where you buy the ticket to go into the actual hike, which blew my mind. I kept thinking like, okay, we're going to get to the top. We're going to get to the top. After an hour and a half of going up and huffing and puffing and not being able to breathe, we get to buy a ticket to enter the trail that actually starts going. And I was like, that's not real. How can this be? This can't be the way they do it. Why would they put the ticket office at the bottom? I guess it makes more sense because if you can't even make it there, you are in trouble, because that was nothing compared to what came after, which you could see this glacier way up there, like miles away, like high in the sky. Nobody in their right mind would think that this trail is going there. But it does. It's like, I remember this being like, sometimes you see like Asungate from the Sacred Valley. It's like way over there. It's kind of like that. It's like, oh, wait, there's this big mountain over there. And then like, that's where we're going. We're walking. and we had to climb a waterfall. There's points in this hike where it's so steep that you have to use ropes, but they're like chain ropes that are built into the side of the mountain. There's no way that this hike would be allowed in the United States, I don't think, without signing many waivers, because it's just way too dangerous. And then here we are doing this on medicine, by the way, that we forgot to mention. This medicine that we took when we went there was medicine that's made from cactus we got in Chavín. There was wild cactus, and Miguel went and found arms that had fallen to the ground, and then we turned that into medicine. So this is the strongest medicine in the world too. And going up, we made it. We definitely made it. And I guess to put it in perspective, I've hiked the Grand Canyon several times, but you have to go down in one day and then maybe like camp, couple days, recover, and then come back out. This would be like hiking the Grand Canyon all the way down and then coming back out in one day, and also drinking a lot of Huachuma. This is not a performance enhancing medicine by any means. So that's like the scale of how difficult it was. It was really an interesting experience, and I'm grateful I did it. I don't know that I would ever do that one again, unless I was really acclimated, like 3 weeks plus in high elevation.
I loved Churup. That was like maybe one of the most beautiful days, beautiful ceremonies I've had. Everywhere you looked, it was like snow-capped mountains off in the distance and waterfalls, and it was really just such a beautiful place. But again, it was almost like I was a little bit overstimulated, like with the beauty and the hardness of the hike, that it made it a little harder to drop in deep, 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 because I was worried about walking and then checking to make sure you guys were okay. And then also there's so much beauty all around me that it was like, a little bit like stimulating. So that's another place that I do want to go back to one day, so I can go a little bit deeper into the prayer now that I've been there once and I know what to expect. And there was these like sweet little dogs that came with us all day. And that was probably the most I cried for that whole ceremony. It broke me open. Even when we were in the van afterwards, I was just thinking about these little stray mountain dogs that are so skinny, and one had like an infected eye, and they were so sweet and followed us all day, which I love when dogs and animals come with us on our hikes, because I just love animals. But they were kind of with us all day and looking for food from different hikers, which it broke my heart. They were just like shooing them away, and we fed them with what we had. I think like some dried up lentil snacks, and so you and I gave them dried mangoes, and but then I just kept thinking about those two little pups out there on the mountain and how loved like our dogs are. And my heart just really breaks open for animals. And then I was thinking, I want to come rescue them. But then I was like, but they live on this mountain. Like, I don't think I would be saving them from anything. They just need food. They don't really need to leave this beautiful place. I would hate to take them, because I actually want to live there. So that was one of the most impactful things of that trip that really broke my heart open, was those pups.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad to see them, because they've been conditioned that that's their way of getting food, is to beg from hikers. But they're obviously not getting enough food, so that's really sad to watch. But yeah, the place was very overstimulating, not just with the nature, but there's thousands of hikers. I would say thousands, hundreds, I don't know.
Yeah, big groups.
It turns out that that's like one of the number 3 hikes in the entire world. So it's like on people's bucket list that are world hikers, they go around and they try to do that hike. So I think we were drastically unprepared for what we were getting ourselves into. Like, we had never been there, and I don't think Miguel had ever been there either. And so, yeah, it's definitely one of those hikes where, everybody had sticks, like poles, hiking poles. They were, packed very light. We were like packed very heavy, no poles, it wasn't, we were not in good shape. I mean, at the time we got to the top, which was absolutely amazing that we actually made it there.
Yeah.
And there were tons of people up there. And at some point I like looked up because I was just resting, laying down. And there's a group of elderly people, like old and wearing shorts. And they just came out of nowhere. And I'm like, these people made it, and I could barely make it. It was really humbling to see them. And I was fairly convinced that there was another way up because there were people at the top that did not come the way we came. Like you kept seeing people come over this ridge over on the right side.
Mhm.
I was like, there's people coming from over there. And then like when we were at the top and Miguel was like, let's go back. I was like, are we not going to go back the easy way? He goes, I think it's just one way. I was like, well, there's like another way. There's like people coming over there. And he's like, really? But I had no way to confirm it, So I still think that there's a road that goes up that way. I think what it was is like the road that we stopped at where we got out. If you would have kept driving on that road, you end up at the top. And probably these people were dropped at the top by their tour bus and they walked down and they got picked up at the bottom by the same bus. That's what I'm thinking happened because I don't know. I can't believe that everybody did that hike, especially the older people, but it's possible. It's possible they did. Who knows? Guess we'll find out one
Well,
day.
that's like classic Miguel is like, oh, there's a plane, but we're going to take the overnight bus. Or like when we go to Chicon, it's like through the brush, we're like bushwhacking. It's like, you're always like, never mind that road right there.
Never
So
mind
that
that there's
would,
a clear path to walk on. We will always take the harder path.
yes. So this was no different.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I mean, I've learned, on these ceremonies that there is a point to it too. It's not just um, to torture people, but actually to push up against our limiting beliefs is really powerful and important to do. Because I think most people would look at that hike and if they knew, like if I knew what it was going to be, I probably would have talked myself out of it. So it's actually better that I didn't know how hard it was going to be. And we just did it. And there's benefit in that because you see that you're actually capable, even though I'm still dealing with a broken toenail and things. Overall, I'm fairly unscathed. So that was really great. And then, yeah, I don't think we're going to get into it too much. This is kind of the end, but we went from there back to Sacred Valley. And then we had 2 retreats this year. There was a Heart Path retreat, which was all people who were coming for the first time, not necessarily first time with Huachuma, but first time with us on the retreat. And then we had a group of returning people that we did a more advanced retreat with. We called the Fire Path because it had a fire ceremony appended to the already 2 ceremonies. And I really thought they were beautiful, the retreats. And we're still doing integration calls and we have our containers still going for those. So we're still in touch with people and yeah, just like letting the medicine still work, a couple months later.
I just have to say, I've gotten the opportunity to be with you every single year that you've gone to Peru and taken people. And it really like I can feel the bigness of the prayers. They get bigger and better each year, just even outside of the retreat with the Huachuma Foundation and the podcast and all of the different things that you're doing now to like continue this movement and mission. And it's just really, it's been so beautiful to see the evolution of it and even like the people who are coming and the 2 retreats. And I just have to say, I loved the structure of it this year and having the people who hadn't been there before. And then we really got to show them that. And then just afterwards, the contrast of people who have been to Peru before and worked with Miguel. And we got to go a little deeper and be sort of in the ceremonial container for a good like 5 or 6 days, whatever it was. And we didn't really come out of it until the very end. And I just appreciated that because there's something in me that loves the newbies. Like I love them seeing things for the first time and having all the questions. And I know you're like the advanced practitioners. There's something about the newbies that I love. And so they just hold such a special part in my heart. And then getting to do the fire path with like some of our best friends also had its own kind of magic to it. So I just look at this time in Peru as, one of the most beautiful summers that I've spent there for so many reasons, and like really intense with the lessons and all the things that came through. And some of our other podcast episodes, actually, before we got into this Plant More, Worry Less podcast, we talked a little bit about like how you met Ross, and Ross introduced you to Miguel, and sort of the story of you meeting Miguel in Peru. And actually, so cool, Ross got to come with us this year on the fire path, which was such a big prayer of mine to meet him in person. And we have the same birthday. I think he's super amazing, and just so glad I got to meet him. But I'm kind of curious, like, if it's okay to ask you a question about this, is like, how did you know that you wanted to take people to do this? I know that like you would go for your own personal work, but like what was the moment when you were like, yeah, I want to bring people to experience this?
Yeah, I don't know if I've shared this before. I think I have shared it sometime, maybe not on this podcast, but it was 2018 where I met Ross, and I had been working with Huachuma before that, so it wasn't my first time working with Huachuma. In fact, I was working pretty heavily with Huachuma when I met Ross in the jungle, and we were doing dieta, and studying the Shipibo way. He turned me on to this idea of the hike, or what Miguel would call like a walk. And Ross was like, well, you work with Huachuma. Have you ever done it as a walk, like in the mountains? And I was like, no, never done it that way. Usually we take the medicine and we're kind of, more internal. We'll, maybe go outside or, that kind of thing. But we weren't like structured hike. He's like, you should try a walk with this guy, Miguel. I just think you're going to like it. And I'm pretty sure on the podcast, Ross talks about this. But anyway, to cut the long story short, that's how I met Miguel. And the first ceremony I had with Miguel was at a place called Kinsacocha, and you've been there now. It was one of the hardest days of my life, probably, as far as just like, what the heck? Like it made ayahuasca, and I had been in the jungle with ayahuasca and many ayahuascas. It made ayahuasca seem like kids playing in a sandbox. I was like, there was actual threat of death. Like, the thing that happens with ayahuasca is that it's all hypothetical. Like, you drink the medicine, you may feel like you're going to die. You may be absolutely 100% convinced you're going to die, but it's all happening in your conscious awareness, and you're usually laying on the mat. And this was nothing like that. It was exactly the opposite. And coming from the jungle where we had just spent a month with ayahuasca, it was such a stark contrast, where it's like, we're walking. I would have said that this hike is like level 5 anyway. If you're on a scale of 1 to 5, like how hard is it? Even without medicine, it's level 5. Like it's advanced. And then you add Miguel, giving you the strongest Huachuma I had ever had in my life. And then it started sleeting, like frozen ice on us during the final altar, and thinking you're going to die of hypothermia, high elevation. I'm not putting this out there as like any kind of like good thing, but in the end, what I realized is like, whoa, in the ayahuasca experience in the jungle, everything was hypothetical. Every fear was all just happening in my mind. It wasn't real in that sense. But every fear that I confronted on that mountain, every thought I had about, am I going to survive? That was real. I was actually confronting real fear in a way that was practical and easy to see, because Huachuma doesn't take you into dissociative state. It's sort of like what I was explaining in Chavín. When I confronted that fear of authority with the medicine in real time, that is different. That is manifestly different than having a vision in an ayahuasca ceremony of some authority figure and then coming to some realization. This is very hard for me to convince the ayahuasca people of, and I don't need to convince them. I'm not trying to. But what you accomplish if you're looking to conquer fear, which I think fear is the biggest impediment to our happiness, honestly, is fear. If you go on one day on the mountain with Miguel and you come out alive, which you will, nobody dies, you will have conquered a lot of fears, and not just with Miguel. I mean, these ceremonies, we can do them in other places, and there's ways to confront the fear safely where you're not actually in danger. So the first ceremony I had with Miguel was Quinsacocha, and I actually thought I was going to die. There was a point in the final altar, and I remember this vividly, where I was very convinced that I'm dying of hypothermia. I wasn't prepared. It just come from the jungle. I didn't have warm clothes. It was sleeting ice. I was shaking so violently that I just couldn't even. And then I had this moment where I said to myself, as Miguel was praying, I guess that's it. So I surrender. If this is it, then this is it. And I surrendered into it, and all of the pain went away. And then I was just with him in his prayer. And it was just me and the prayer and all of this happening. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences. And that was when I first really connected with the idea of a prayer. I'm very anti-religion, generally speaking, because I just had bad experiences and have seen a lot of the harms that organized religion have done, but that was very powerful. And so this other ceremony we did on that trip was to a place called Pachatusan, which you've been to now too. And when we got to the top of Pachatusan, which is a very hard hike to get up to the top, it opens into one of the most beautiful places you've ever been. It goes beyond any words that I could have. And I just started crying. I couldn't hold back the tears, because what I was feeling was this sense that if anybody in my life, and the person that came to mind most was my dad. I was like, I just wish my dad could see this place or experience what I'm experiencing now. If all the people I love could experience this, they would have a totally different outlook on life. It would relieve so much suffering, basically, because a lot of our suffering is not knowing who we are, where we are, and that puts it all in perspective in a way that is very hard to describe. So even when I'm trying to describe it now, it feels very inadequate. So the feeling I had was, I have to bring those people here. And at first it was just that feeling I got to bring my dad, I got to bring my sister, I got to bring these people that are close to me. But as time went on, I realized, so that was 2018, I realized no, my dad is not coming. He has difficulty walking. This isn't a thing. And I started to go through this letting go process. You're not bringing those people. But doesn't mean you can't bring other people. And so it took me a long time to really come to it. And then, in 2023 is when, so 5 years after that is when I took the first group. But it had been that prayer had been there and manifesting and just working its way. And that's when I decided, because I just realized I'm okay with words. I can write, I can speak, but there are no words. You cannot communicate what people experience there. It is so beyond anything. And I know it sounds whoa, these people are real high. It's so beyond. It's you just got to go. There's no way else to experience it. You have to do it. And so that's why we take people, is so that they can come to their own experience of that. And maybe they'll put words to it. Or we've had people who are artists who will create music or poetry or things to better describe it. But it's something that is really life-changing. And I now say the word life-changing as a disclaimer, not as a sales pitch. Like, disclaimer. It's like, once you see heaven, you can't unsee it. This will change your life. And whether you are ready for that, it's up to you. So,
Bam. That's do you feel like the your reasons have changed now that you've done it for 4 years, going into the fifth one? Do you feel like it's still really like that's the essence of it?
well, I feel like at the time that this was all starting to manifest, the prayer, I was still really kind of like wrapping up the second altar of my life. I took a lot longer maybe than some people, but I was around 37, 38 years old. So I was starting to I was already in service, like that was kind of my thing, but I still was seeking for myself a lot. And that's why I was there. I was still seeking for myself. But yeah, I'm, 46 now, and I'm like well grounded into this third altar of service. So I think now, to me, it's less about me. Even that part of like wanting to share with people was still about me in some way. And now it's really about other people. And I just want to be in service to that. And um yeah, so I like to go. But I don't think I would go for myself. I wouldn't go for myself anymore. I go because of the people going, and like seeing them go through it. Like, I do have a special place in my heart for the first timers. Um, and there's something magical about seeing their faces, like after that first ceremony, or like even at the fourth altar, to just see them, because it's like, it's so life changing for a lot of them just to have that experience. And even the first timers that come, they're not inexperienced. Most of them have like a lot of experience with plant medicines, other plant medicines, some with Huachuma. But, the combination of everything, on these retreats really makes it a different type of thing.
Mm. Yeah, there's something that happens between the prayers, the medicine, and then the container. It's like a co-creation at some point. Like you set out the prayer, like, okay, this is when we're going. And then whoever shows up, I love this term, the wonderful web of Huachuma, because it feels like there's another consciousness that's directing the people into experiences with us. And sometimes it's like the perfect dream team group. Sometimes it's like a little bit, people are kind of doing their own thing and whatever, but it's all medicine and it's all part of it and it's all so perfect. So something I kind of geek out on is watching it unfold as we're there all together. And then even afterwards, looking back and being like, oh, that was like such a perfect group for that time. And it even correlates to, like you were telling me the other day, like your nervous system is the nervous system of the group. So sometimes I even think about the place where you are, where we are, and then the people that get called in is like exactly what's sort of needed. And I just want to comment on what a great example you've been for me about being in the unity altar of your life and going from clarity into unity. And like you reminding me that it's like about the others now. And I'm sort of in that. I feel very much I'm still in the clarity altar of my life, but like moving step by step into the unity altar. And I feel that happening. So I just, you've been such a great reflection and reminder and example for me about how to really make it about the others. And I think this year was a big year where I finally like really, really got that in a big way. And, we're all learning and I mess it up a lot. So I just appreciate you teaching me, even though I've been there, it feels like a million times with you. There's like other lessons that are coming now that have less to do about Huachuma and more to do, yeah, about me. Um, and I guess just like one more question about the retreats. Do you ever think about like what you hope people leave with, or what you hope that they come? Is there any like prayer that you hold in your heart for the ones that are coming, or are you just sort of in full trust and surrender to the mountains and to the medicine, and that people are going to get what they need?
Yeah, I try to, when I think about a container, I think about Javier a lot, Javier Reguero, because he really has a powerful teaching on this, but he talked about how a container should be like the cup that you serve the medicine with, which is clean, hopefully, and and empty because it should just provide the containment for what happens, and the medicine itself is going to be the individual experiences of people. So from my perspective, holding the container, I don't have an intention other than to hold the container for them to have whatever experience is theirs. And it's why I try not to push too hard on like imposing my viewpoints. If people ask me, I'll certainly share. But I do want people to develop their own, everything. And the other thing to keep in mind, it's good to just keep in mind anyway, is when you're working with people who are working with Huachuma or any medicine that expands consciousness, so psychedelics, um, people become very impressionable. And, everything that you say as a facilitator, even if you're just holding the container, is going to land in a deeper way. So I'm also sort of aware of that always and trying not to contaminate the medicine, not put myself between them and the medicine. And so that they can experience it. And it's not about like what I think, it's really about what they come to. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, it depends on the group. Like we have, so many groups and different dynamics, and it's not me sometimes doing the the contamination, right? It's like other people in the group imposing their views. And so like a lot of what we do preparation wise is to talk about that. And I know like I belabor the points, but like we have slide presentations and calls where I talk about how we're going to hold space for each other. We're not going to impose our views in that way. I don't call it, I don't speak of it in the same way, each time it's a little bit different, but really to allow people to have their experience is part of how we hold space for them. So that's how I hold space for people too. It's not about like hoping they get something. I do know that they will get something. I just don't know what that is. And yeah, I think that works for me. I think sometimes this is just my observation, is that some traditions, they push too hard into people's experiences. Like one tradition that I had a really deep dive in was the Shipibo tradition. And I think they push too hard. They push their views way too hard into people. And you cannot really just casually engage with the Shipibo tradition, because even if you shut off and you say, okay, I'm not going to believe all of the things, they're still going to put their beliefs on you. And your psyche is so open with the medicine that you're going to internalize some of it. So, that is like me having it done to me. I was like, I don't really want to do that to anybody else. Because I know that after my experience in the jungle, it took me years to undo. And I didn't believe it, there's a lot of the things they were saying, but my psyche had already been exposed in such an open way to a lot of their things. It took me a long time to get past some of their things. And I think that is dangerous, honestly. And, like a lot of the things that I would say are harmful in the plant medicine space is that it's like people like me who are young and eager to learn, and we just dive into a month with the Shipibo without knowing that we're actually walking into a complex belief system that we might have a difficult time untangling later. So I see that happening, with the spread of certain traditions, and, no judgment. Everybody gets drawn to their own tradition. But I really do think that, like, the traditions that resonate most for me are the ones that keep it open. Like, even though we have the altars aren't telling people what their experience needs to be. They're just opening a doorway into what that experience could be for them. And it's not the place of the facilitator to tell the person what it means. Everybody figures it out for themselves. So that's kind of how I hold the containers too, in that way, and just hope and trust, actually, that people will get what they need as long as I am holding the container in a good way.
Mhm. Love that. I chuckled a little bit when you said clean cup because I thought of Miguel's cup. And now
Yeah.
we always it's like thick. Well, now he's got a new cup, but I just had a little chuckle over a clean cup.
Well, I just remember Javier in one of his books or one of his podcasts or one of his talks, he says, a cup should be clean. Just like the container should be clean, So it's interesting. Yeah, and Miguel's cup is his cup. It's clean in its own way.
Yeah, I know. Last question I have for you is there a favorite part of these retreats? Something that you look forward to every year, and something that, like you take home with you, and just kind of like, a favorite part?
My favorite part is probably just being taken care of, honestly, by Jesusa, the lady that cooks for us, is one of my favorite parts. Just really feeling like we're taken care of. That feeling of not having to take care of myself, because I'm, an adult and I do all the adult things and always having to take care of myself and take care of others. I really feel like that is one of my favorite things. Now, the things that we do, I love the sound that we do. We go to Si Gonzalo, the Maha Templo. It's always one of my favorite things. And of course, the ceremonies themselves are, I love them.
Good. And I know you love the community too, like
Yeah.
that whole aspect of it. You always mention that.
Yes. I mean, that's really the medicine for me, is the people. And we create this whole family. I mean, whether we want to or not, create it. And that's really what I like.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you want to say or ask, or do you think we've reached completion? Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, that's good. I think we'll leave it there.
Okay. Great. I'm so glad we did this. It's always so nice to reminisce. And, last night we were talking in a call and like, was that a dream? Did that really happen? And so it's nice to kind of recap and look at pictures sometimes and be like, no, we did live that. That was real. Great. So, well, thank you so much, Hamid. And thanks for giving me the space to talk about my experience too. And, I can't wait for next year. I'm looking forward to it already.
Yeah, me too. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it this far, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This podcast episode was a production of the Huachuma Foundation. If you would like to be a guest on our show, email us at huachumafoundation@gmail.com. If you would like to learn more about us or support our mission, please visit huachumafoundation.org. And most of all, remember to plant more, worry less.